유행하는 다 방어하고 근데 공격은 자기 방식대로 하는
사람이랑 못하니까
운동하고 시체적인
감기고 사실
소화 맞아 공부하고 막 이상한 소화도 안 되고 잠이 안 오는 거 맞아.
In the heart of Apgujeong, in the Gangnam district of Seoul, South Korea, there sits a haven for lovers, practitioners, and competitors of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Professor John Frankl, a third-degree black belt, is the first person to ever start teaching the Brazilian martial art here in Korea. With at least 17 locations around Korea representing the John Frankl competition team name, and Professor Frankl being the East Asian director of Straight Blast Gym International. Professor Frankl's gyms are the go-to locations for all jiu-jitsu practitioners and lovers, including well-known names such as UFC featherweight champion Mugyum Choi, UFC featherweight mixed martial artist Doo-ho Choi, and celebrity actor Jung Myung-chun, to name a few. Simply put, Professor Frankl is the premier name in the Korean jiu-jitsu community. We sat with Professor Frankl to hear about the beginnings of how jiu-jitsu and its team in Korea began.
In 1988, I came to Korea as an exchange student. And in 1989, when I was going home, it was June of 1989, I was going home and I had a buddy from Berkeley who had graduated and he was a Japanese Hawaiian, he was back in Hawaii. He said, just get a stopover. Back then it was like $50 to stop in Hawaii on the way to California. Stopped in Hawaii. And we had done martial arts together, very similar martial arts. He's like, oh, I'm doing this new thing called Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. I'm like, okay, cool. I know what Jiu-Jitsu is, I know that. He's like, no, it's not what you think, it's different. I'm like, how different could it be? He's like, okay, the typical thing, lie down, I'm gonna mount you, and you escape. He wasn't trying to choke me or punch me, just escape. And of course I thought, I know how to get out of here. And a couple minutes later, I couldn't do anything, I was exhausted. And he was like a white belt who'd been training like 3 months with Rickson Gracie. So this is the second Jiu-Jitsu Academy in the United States. So this starts with Horion, right, in Torrance, and then Rickson moves to Hawaii and opens the second one. And so I knew, like, this is what I want to do. I want to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Sitting there from 89 through 94 for 5 years, knowing about this. So when the UFC started and everyone was surprised, I already knew Royce is going to win. I was already, from 89 on, I was tuned in. And I was learning jiu-jitsu as much as you can from those original videos that Horion put out with Royce. Of course, I got them. I was here already doing martial arts, so I was practicing this with my friends, but no one to tell me what mistakes I was making, just trying to copy the videos as well as I could. And I moved to LA and I signed up at Rickson's. So that was 94. So it'll be 20 years this summer. This is 2014. 94, summer, went back, moved to LA, signed up at Rickson's. That's where I trained for my first year. That's where I got my blue belt. And then I went off to Boston for graduate school. And when I went off to graduate school, I found Roberto Maia. So he's my second teacher. He's originally from Gracie Baja. He's the cousin of Renzo and the Machados through their mothers. They all have different last names, but all their mothers or sisters. And he's my teacher for purple, for brown, for black belts. So I got all my other belts from him. I would have, I'm a pretty loyal person, and so I would have done the same thing with Rickson, but can't really learn jiu-jitsu from 3,000 miles away and just going to seminars and stuff. So I would rather have someone less famous than Rickson, but train with him every day than say, I train with Rickson and see him once every 6 months. And then during the time, before I got my black belt, so I was a brown belt, it was 1999, and I came to Korea for a year to do research. So I was finishing up my PhD, I was gonna live here for a year and do dissertation research, and I was like, there's no way I'm not gonna do jiu-jitsu for a year. It's just not an option. And so I started a little club with the idea that I needed to teach people a little bit just so I could have training partners. And so I was affiliated with Yonsei University as a graduate student. That's where I am now as a professor, but I was a graduate student there. And so I had use of the judo mats. And I just started a little club, and the first class was my good friend, Steve Kavener. It was just the two of us, and he's my first black belt as well. And we just had a class, and then a second class, and we told some other friends, and I put out some stuff on the internet, and people would come up on the weekends from down south, because it was the only place to train. And it got pretty big, so that we would train at Yonsei Tuesday, Thursdays, and then Friday, Saturdays, there was a kickboxing gym. It's still here. It's called Samsan Kickboxing. And I was friendly with the instructor there, and they closed on weekends, and they had mats. And I said, okay, can we train here on weekends? He's like, yeah, of course. So we Tuesdays and Thursdays at Yonsei, Friday and Saturday over here in Gangnam. And that was it. We trained 4 days a week. And when I left, after a year, I had 3 blue belts. And, one was Vietnamese American who went back. 2 were Korean and Steve. And they kept it going. Steve at Yonsei and the Korean kid in Gangnam. And they kept it going, and I never expected to move back. So I would come back for seminars twice a year. They, teach them, and they kept training. Then I graduated in 2003. Opened an academy actually in California, Chico, California, in 2003. Right after I graduated, I really was burnt out on academics, and I thought I wanted to do this full time for a living. So I opened NorCal Martial Arts, NorCal Brazilian Jiu Jitsu up in Chico. It was also CrossFit NorCal. And it's an anecdote, but that was the 4th CrossFit gym ever. Now that I think there are over 10,000. And I hated it. I hated doing it as a business. I hated trying to convince people of the value of jiu-jitsu when the value of jiu-jitsu was so self-evident to me. And I realized, wow, okay. And after a year, I put some distance between myself and my dissertation. So, okay, I actually do like academics. I was just overworked, right? It's like overtraining, overworking. And after a year, I was like, I'm gonna go back to this. So I went back, I came to Korea, because there was a teaching job, a university job here. But I expected to have an academy in America, and then just live in America and come back here twice a year for seminars. So when I moved back, I started training here full time. Suyong runs this school, came to me. He's my first Korean black belt. Jinu, a bunch of my black belts now. We sort of re-met. I knew them from before when I would come and do seminars. So anyway, that's the beginning of the association.